Just watch me breaking. I swear, you're falling into me, touch me. I swear, you would do anything that I want. So keep us awake till the dawn. Baby, feel free. I wanna make you sweat on me. I wanna make you sweat on me.
Hello and welcome to our third year of Grow with Inbound. Our first 2 years were live events in central London, and of course this year the pandemic means that we are fully virtual. But this year as Huble Digital, we're also fully international. Earlier this morning we interviewed Shahid Nizami, who heads up HubSpot in Singapore, HubSpot's regional HQ for APAC, and they call it SingSpot. As they were finishing their day and we were just starting ours, it was 8 o'clock here in London. Now we're traveling to Dublin to visit what HubSpot called Dubspot in the middle of our day in London. And we're also running presentations from our Huble offices in Cape Town. We're going to finish our day from London by waking up HubSpot HQ on the East Coast in Boston. And then the final session of our day from North America will come from our friends in the Huble office in Chicago. So through the day, we've got 15 different sessions running with 22 fantastic hosts and presenters who will be joining us from 4 continents, Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America, and from numerous different time zones. Today, you're joining 612 marketers, salespeople, customer service experts, as well as many of our friends from other HubSpot partners that we work with around the world on a day-to-day basis. I'm really pleased that you've been able to join us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and be with us. Truly, it wouldn't have been the same without you. We hope you'll find that this is both educational and informative. Now let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to Christian Kinnear. Christian, welcome. I have a slide to show you Christian's background, his career river of life, as HubSpot would say. So Christian was born in Dublin, went to college in University College in Dublin, joined Sage when they were set up in Ireland in '99, moved to the UK in 2003 to lead sales for accounting software vendor TAS, and he came home to Ireland in 2005 to join Oracle to help to establish their applications business, running their Northern European SME business, and then running their UK commercial technology business. And he went to business school at Cranfield and IESE in Barcelona as part of a sponsored development program where he realized that there was a whole new wave of tech coming. So he left Oracle. And after a short sabbatical in France, he joined Google to run their sales development business for EMEA, APAC, and Japan. Then in 2015, he met a man called G2 Martani who worked for HubSpot. Well, that pretty much morphed into an interview process, and before he knew it, he joined HubSpot, replaced G2 in running Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And fast forward 5 years, and that's where we are today. So welcome, Christian. We've just in that short 5-year period, you've certainly made it a very cool place to work in HubSpot in Dublin, and these awards pay testament to that. Now, we've saved up just a couple of slides, which I thought you might like to help us with an explanation of. Perhaps you'd like to just tell us about this one, would you? What I understand to be the loves of your life, as it were.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for the introduction. Gosh, that river ran fast. That seems not that long ago that all those events occurred. So hi everybody. Yeah, the loves of my life. I've got them on the screen here. I should say in no particular order, but maybe I should be in order. My family is first, top left. It's my wife Susie and my little son Daniel. Probably the center of my universe, as is for most of you, I'm sure. Bottom left is an interesting one. Myself and Bob talk about a little bit. I am a self-confessed Everton supporter. the Irish Toffees, you can see there. For my sins, I began following them back in the 80s, the Howard Kendall years when they were winning everything, and thought, gosh, that's a great team to support. And unfortunately, that was the peak. But given, I suppose I was only probably 2 years old in the mid 80s, Bob, would that sound right to you? For my
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, look, I was impressionable. Bottom right, Leinster. So rugby is my big passion. That's myself and my brothers in the Aviva Stadium. But Leinster and Irish rugby is my big passion. I played a bit in the day, back in the day. And then top right is a Crumlin. It's a children's hospital charity that I'm a part of. I like to get involved and help in my spare time there too. So a few things that I'm passionate about.
I think there's also one other thing that you love. Maybe you'd like to explain this one.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Bob. Yeah, this is they say HubSpot in your DNA, right? Or you should have a love of your business in your DNA. So yeah, this is where I dyed my hair orange. This was a few years ago, back in 2016, I think it was. It was actually for a good cause. It wasn't just on a whim. So we had an annual charity auction, and we're auctioning various things. And one of the salespeople suggested live in the room that, hey, how about we auction whoever pays whatever amount of money, Christian will dye his hair orange for a week. And I, at the time, had a couple of drinks on board and said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. It's for a good cause. So we did it, and I didn't tell my wife, so I arrived home one day with looking like this, and she was surprised is a good word to use, maybe. But yeah, all for a good cause. But yeah, it was a fun experience too. It was great.
That's grand. And I'd really like to thank the people in your office who helped us to find that particular photo. Thanks, guys. We should talk some business. The big thing that's impacted everybody is, of course, the pandemic. And I'm very curious to understand how things have changed for HubSpot through this period. Tell us a little about how you've adapted to things.
Yeah, gosh, yeah, it's probably the obvious place to start. So I think from maybe I'll talk about the business itself, a little of how we've been preparing for this. I think we already had quite an autonomous culture as part of our business. You know quite well, Bob, how we do things. So we already relied on people, and we trust a lot about it's not what you do, it's what you do, not where you do it. And we tend to lean into that and assume and trust people who do the right thing. So we've already had quite a flexible culture anyway. Dharmesh a couple of years ago began talking about the future of work and remote being so important, and we should start to orient ourselves in that direction. Last year at Inbound, he talked about this on the main stage. So we already had a remote program manager in role. We had people designing programs and helping us think about remote roles and how we might hire and develop and manage people remotely. All this has been happening for about 18 months. So we were kind of getting ourselves oriented the right way. So when it came, I think we like everybody, gosh, it was a shock to the system for everybody. We were similar, but I think the adaptation was probably the thing that impressed me the most. I was incredibly proud that people adapted as quickly as they did. So we, from our side, said we will close the offices. We will give people the option eventually, when local guidance allowed, to opt in to come back to office. There was zero expectation of people coming back in, which took the pressure off people who maybe would have felt uncomfortable. So stay home, be safe, look after yourselves. And we're still in that phase at the moment. So we'll review that, I think, as kind of the situation evolves. A little bit, we're helping people then at home around their home setup. So some folks required a bit of help in office/home setup. We've been doing some work with that and offering some financial support as well. So generally, I think we've adapted quite well from an employee point of view. The big question is, I guess, what's next? And that's, everyone on this call has the same question. I don't have the answer to that, but I will say from what's happened for us is we again had people, be it the individual contributor or the managers and leaders, everybody before COVID thought remote is for sure a thing, but it probably is somewhere future. It's probably a few years down the track, and that few years got condensed into a couple of months. And I think it's helped all of us probably fast track our own evolution of actually remote really, it does work. It's here, it's now, it's viable. people maybe had hesitations about maybe pushing towards a remote direction, but now people are realizing, actually, I don't know why I thought this might be a concern. It's perfectly fine. It works well. So we've taken quite a big step internally. We've announced that we now have a formal version of our future of work, which I can share with the folks here. Is you will each year now as a HubSpotter be able to choose your adventure to some degree. So you can choose to say, I would like to be formally an office-based employee, and all this, of course, in the context of, let's assume, post-COVID. So office being that you'll be in the office for at least 3 days a week, probably 5 days a week. So you'll have your own desk and so on. Flex, where you're saying I'll be in 2 or less days per week. So you'll get some designation of desk area, and you'll have to have some flexibility about that space. But you'll be 2 days in, 3 days at home. And then full home, full remote is that you've no desk assigned to you in the office. You can, of course, come visit the office, but we'll have like a hotel booking system. You want to book a desk, you go in beforehand, you got to book your space before you come. So we're formalizing that, which just gives people lots and lots of clarity, which the reaction's been really good. Because in a world of uncertainty, people wondering, you know, we're managing the business a certain way today, but how can I plan for maybe where to buy a house? Can they buy a house near to the office or far from the office? Will they have the option to be able to work remotely or not? And I think this has given lots of good clarity for people. And the last 2 bits, I guess, is we've made a determination that for next year onwards, just because it takes a little bit of time to get the wheels turning, the vast majority of roles will be location agnostic. So where you see something, you can apply, and you do not need to live in Dublin, Berlin, Cambridge, Paris, Singapore, wherever it might be. So long as we're able to employ you in that country, you'll be able to work with us wherever in that country, because we obviously need the legal setup that we can employ you. But we're going to pivot towards that. And the most interesting one we're working through, and again, this is a work in progress, is we have, we're proud of the culture that we've got, the benefits and culture package and the way we look after our employees. And some of that was office centered. We were able to provide a bunch of things within that kind of office location. We need to adapt that too. So we're going to have to find new and interesting ways to offer very nice benefits that will are valued by people, but then continue to grow the culture and evolve the culture, because, you know, like all of us, this is a new world we have to navigate. So we're figuring that out now as well.
Yes, I think there are a number of issues around how you maintain those relationships and support the culture of the businesses. I'm sure it's what everybody's struggling with at the moment. I've just had a twig here to say, look, I omitted to mention that the chat pane is a great opportunity for you to ask questions of Christian. We've got a little bit of time earmarked, and provided we don't get carried away, we'll have a bit of space at the end. So please do pop some questions into the chat pane, and by miraculously they'll appear up here on my screen. So given that you have managed the development of the people part of things, how about the customers? How are your customers adapting to these changes in their dealings with yourselves? Yeah,
so I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag, and I'll explain what I mean. So from the customers themselves, what we're seeing maybe at a macro and high level is we've certainly seen that small business customers and prospects have reacted fastest. And that is, I think, just a requirement. So if you're a smaller business, I think you are probably a little bit more precariously positioned in terms of cushion to absorb the impact of something like COVID. So it's a little bit of adapt or die, I guess, to a certain degree for a smaller business, and that's very, very understandable. So they've made decisions quickly to adapt. I think their decision making is usually one or less than 1 or 2 people. So we've seen a really interesting adaptation by the small business community globally. Mid-market, up-market, kind of the larger clients, a little bit slower. And again, that's very understandable. They're a more complex business unit. They need to maybe pause and reflect a bit more deeply about how to course correct or change some of their trajectory. So We've seen those folks being a little bit slower to change and adapt to what's happening. But what we've done around them is, from a customer point of view, we've been really mindful that, again, there's companies of all shapes and sizes who may be feeling the pinch in the eye of the storm, and that was probably the March, April window. We arranged for a bunch of things around flexible payment structures and how to think about if they needed cash flow support from us, how we might do that. And we did a bunch of work with customers on a case-by-case basis. And partners, as you know, Bob, we worked through trying to help partners through commission payments, that we thought one way to facilitate the channel is to pay commissions in advance, which we did, was to try and support the channel piece. Released a bunch of product features. So again, there's we thought this would be an interesting opportunity to help our customers keep in touch with their customers and engage with their customers and try and pass on that cascade effect. So we unlocked a bunch of product features saying, even though you haven't paid for it, let's help you contact our customers through calling and mail and video and a bunch of other things to just help you communicate in this time where everybody's looking for some assurance. And then I think the other piece, we tried on our marketing side to just offer a bunch of content people might have found useful around, not about how to grow your business per se, but just how to navigate these difficult times, how to communicate, how to understand, how to stay in touch with your clients and customers and so on. So the macro stuff was there. I think within that, as much as you want, I can talk about some of the things we've seen in the data side of it. So we do a bit of diligence around the data that we see aggregated at a customer level. So I can elaborate on that as much if you want as well.
Well, I guess I'm curious to understand how it's worked for you overall. The indicators from what I've seen lately are very positive. How's HubSpot faring through these times?
Yeah, we are in good shape, I think is probably it's a fair statement. So I think folks in this call probably all appreciate that what COVID has done is, be it from a consumer or business angle, people have leaned into digital and online, right? That's just become an accelerant, a sort of forcing factor for folks to, whoever were thinking about maybe taking a digital transformation step or moving more online, this has just been a push. So there's a degree of tailwind, if you like, that's in the SaaS industry and the digital industry, the tech industry. There is a tailwind that's kind of helping at an industry level, and we're seeing that too. I think it's been an interesting exercise in us trying to understand what those drivers are and how it looks. But to your point a moment ago, we released our Q2 results and numbers. They're out quite recently, and in general, yeah, we've I guess a good bill of health across revenue, profit, cash flow, and so on. All the kind of underpinnings, the pieces that are most important. Our cash in bank is very, very strong. I think we've announced we've got $1 billion of cash flow in the bank. So the things that you really want to make sure you're storm-proof as much as you can be storm-proofed in these situations are good and solid. The other, I guess, points we were proud of is it was a record-setting quarter. We've in terms of the numbers of new customers we've taken on, that was a record-setting quarter of the number of customers, helped a bit by that small business piece I said. So we had a very high volume of those smaller clients, which is fantastic. We're thrilled. So just an interesting anecdote. And then the other part that actually was a very pleasant surprise to us was the retention side. We again had predicted we might see a significant drop off. And again, the logic being, if the pinch comes, people may cancel subscriptions or may not be able to renew the SaaS contracts that we offer. We thought that would be in the 80s. It was in the 90s. And that was really, really an interesting point, that as we're speaking with customers and trying to understand what's happening, the good news, I guess, is that they see us as critical. They see the HubSpot platform as critical to their sustaining their customer base as it is today, keeping clients delighted and happy, finding new business, getting ready for when this thing eventually abates and when they're in a position to grow again. So we've become business critical, which was tremendous to see. Yeah, delighted to see that.
And you spoke briefly there about a tailwind helping to accelerate things. Do you see that I think it's something that we've seen in terms of our own inquiries into Huble. Do you see there is a degree of acceleration towards digital transformation that's helping? Is that what kind of what you're referring to as a tailwind?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think there's, for most companies, and I think of marketing maybe as being the probably most obvious one. Most companies have had either a traditional marketing approach or a blended approach of traditional and maybe a bit more progressive, or some balance between those two. The traditional methods obviously have just become incredibly difficult to execute because most rely on some form of physical interaction, be it events. So the requirement to say, how will we pivot away from those and what do we pivot towards, became digital was the answer. And even for sales as well, for your field salespeople who couldn't call out and call into companies and do as much face-to-face interaction as they would have, they've had to pivot to effectively try to adopt some of the inside sales techniques and some of the leaning on digital and technology much more so than they would have. And again, there's components where people knew, I think, all along these would be things that they would lean into. And I think all had plans eventually to do more on the digital side. But I guess we're a little bit at times stuck in what's working at the moment. And if you have a business that's functioning, it ain't broke, why fix it, might be in people's mind. But when COVID hits and really clears the board of all those traditional components, then you've got to quickly adapt and change and move to something else. And that's what we've seen that.
Okay. So from coming back to customers, can you talk a little about what you've seen in terms of good strategies that are working for organizations in developing their sales and marketing in this climate?
Yeah, I wouldn't be a HubSpotter if I didn't use a little bit of data. So that you'll forgive me for using a little bit of data as we go along. But
data away.
Yeah, right. There you go. So I think what's really interesting. So the discussion typically starts as being, what's anecdotal, what do we hear? And there's like a subjective version of that answer. The data-driven one is that we have a very large pool of both paid and free users and customers today globally. And what we've been doing, and again, if anybody wants this, we can maybe share afterwards. There is reports we share out publicly. You can go and look at these yourselves. That gives that aggregated data view of what's happening in business today. And we have, again, customers who are in, I think it's over 150 countries worldwide at the moment. We're in all segments in terms of the size of companies. We're in all industries. So we've got a really nice, I think, diverse cross-section of population to come into a mix and say the aggregation of this data gives us some indicators. And I think that might be interesting for the folks listening today. So what we're seeing in the last few months, I think there's a few things. The website traffic, to the point we just made a moment ago, jumped up almost straight away. So everybody who's using our products and is measuring website traffic that they're getting, it jumped by 20 to 25% almost instantly. So right around when COVID hit, the line just jumped, and it stayed right up there ever since. It's been high and stay high. So there's been that big impact where all customers and prospects have all said, we need to find something. We're now going online to look for it, much more so than ever before. That was a really interesting step change that's happened. And there's a bunch of traffic out there. So if you're not seeing that yourselves, talk to Bob, talk to folks and figure out, how do you take advantage of that? Because that's happening globally. Everybody's seeing that lift globally today. What we saw on the sales side, we track, again, our customers, aggregated, anonymized sales data just at a very high level. Actual calling, salespeople calling out to their customers, but in terms of phone calling, dropped by 25% almost straight away as well. And that kind of made sense. People suddenly felt, God, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Maybe I shouldn't call my clients. Maybe it's inappropriate. Maybe they're having a difficult time. And there was a hesitation or a reticence to do that. That's starting to come back up. But again, we thought we might see that. The flip side, which we also expected, but it was really interesting to see, was emailing by salespeople really jumped up. So salespeople started doing 60 to 65% more emailing than they had done before COVID. So stopped calling by 25, jumped up their emails by 60, 65. But honestly, the emails, the quality has been pretty awful. So the response rates for those mails crashed by 25%. So now we have salespeople not phoning, sending out lots of emails that are really bad quality. They're not getting opened. And again, for folks in this call, maybe an interesting point is sit with your sales folks and just start to take a look and see what are they sending? Who are they sending it to? Because what you don't want is a panicked sales individual knee-jerk saying, I'm going to effectively spam all the contacts, all my customers, all my prospects, all my target audience, and start blasting out pretty poor mails, burning the brand, and doing some damage to their potential in the market. So big volume, low quality, we've seen that, and that's again pretty consistent across the board. So it's really interesting for folks to dig into. But then our marketing friends have also increased the volumes. They've gone up by about 30% more mails. But really interestingly, their open rates have also jumped by 20%. So now we've kind of an interesting thing where marketing are doing more and getting a much, much better response than they even had back pre-COVID. So lesson, I guess, at an aggregate level is marketing are really good at this stuff. And they understand how to couch language and how to phrase and make sure that that lands well, where the audience appreciates it, the relevancy of, they're looking to personalize and a whole bunch of interesting things. But marketing are very good at this. So get your sales and marketing folks to sit down, figure out what's happening in your business, because there's some interesting things happening. People are receptive to good messages and not to poor. And maybe the last one I'll share with you is ad spend as well. We get a sense of what ad spend looks like. And again, very understandably, very initially ad spend dropped, not completely, it dropped by about 15-20%. People just cut back on costs, saying let's quickly rein in budget to see what's going to happen with COVID, and that dropped. But just since the start of August, people are now spending more on ads than they were even before COVID. So we had this drop and it is eking back up, and now it's jumped, which gives me certainly a sense that there's optimism, a little degree of bullishness. The market is starting to turn. People are thinking, okay, we've sort of level set and we've kind of absorbed the impact in its rawest form, and people have found their new feet and said, okay, we're going to build from here. And it looks like people are now have adapted and are moving on, saying, let's get going again. So I thought that was really interesting too, to see that it's almost like a barometer for optimism, or as I said, that people are getting back out into market. So I thought there are interesting things to share.
Yeah, sure. We've seen that similarly, and I think the only other commentary that I'd add to that from our point of view was it was the appreciation that the massive drop, and we saw a more significant drop with some of our larger paid media clients, that they then appreciated that actually if they went back into spend, they could get a lot more for their money. Because bid rates were a lot lower as a result. So we've seen a gradual move back into that space over that time. Apart from certain markets, I think travel is going to take a bit longer to sort itself out.
Yes. Yep.
So the lovely thing about this is just chatting with you, but the trouble is the clock keeps ticking, and we're rushing through the time we've got available. Okay. And I promised to ask, with Inbound coming up, 22nd, 23rd, new online virtual experience for us all to look at and get involved in. Obviously, you can tell us a few spoilers, a few little, we won't tell anyone, it's okay, it's only just between us. Is there anything you can talk about? Any indicators you can give us of what your plans are?
So yeah, oh Bob, you're a bad influence, but I love it. It's great. I unfortunately won't be able to give direct spoilers as such, but I can maybe give a sense of what's coming, and I would obviously encourage folks. I think what's wonderful about the online version is it's now universally accessible. So the idea of being able to jump in and absorb and receive content through the new platform is going to be great. The team there, by the way, done a huge job. They've built over the last number of months with the help of an external provider and a pretty kick-ass version of an event platform that's custom built for us. So I think you're going to be wowed. So that's all I'll say on the actual event itself.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what's coming, yeah, I think in the different pieces, the products are always the ones that I think get most excited. And it's the same for you and I, Bob. I think the things that excite me the most, marketing is still building out a really nice product set. And I think the guardrails we have is that we feel that our product on the marketing side has to keep the ease of use, that idea that the user interface is intuitive and simple, but we want to build a ton more power, like a bunch more enterprise level power into the product. So you can still use it easily, but you can unlock tons more potential in your business and really leverage that. There's a bunch of things coming. Custom objects is probably the biggest one. That's going to be really interesting. That'll be across the entire platform, but for marketing, that's going to be huge to be able to really just build out those objects that are really customizable for your own business model, make sure you can run your business in a way that is just more meaningful for you in the industry or the type of business that you're running. There's lots more coming around permissions and partitioning. We hear that a lot international specifically. So that's myself and my colleagues outside the US, where people have multiple business units, languages, brands. There's a lot of complexity in international markets. Some in US, but I think it's more complex. And people typically are asking, how do I partition? And then how do I, from a user point of view, where I may have people who I do and don't want to have access to all the components of my platform, can you give me field level permissioning and a few things? So there's a bunch of really good stuff going on there. I think in general, the marketing piece as well, we're seeing this future where the marketing product will really knit far more closely into the CRM. So there's going to be this bi-directional piece where for a marketer to try and figure, how could I have the most personalized and relevant information going to the right persona and right contact at the right time? There's really interesting stuff about within CRM. So event-based triggers where if somebody does something, if I speak to a contact as a salesperson, that can inform the marketing piece, and the marketing product can then take action and automate sequencing and various things to that individual or ads, depending on what kind of triggers and behavioral piece they've had in the CRM. So it's just that knitting those two together is going to be really, really interesting. I think the two that actually get me even more excited, if there is such a thing, is the Sales Hub, what's coming, Sales Hub Enterprise, and Service Hub. I think both of those, there's just so much going on with both of those, where Sales Hub I think is quite well developed, but there's lots coming. Service Hub I think is building up a really nice piece of momentum. So that on the Sales Hub side of it, I think again probably the byword here is for anyone using sales automation CRM. I think in general people appreciate that companies like ourselves, companies in our space, have tried to maybe offer this idea of infinite flexibility. So can I do absolutely everything with the product? Can I flex it 1,000 different ways? And I think the problem is that makes it endlessly complicated. So if the product, you're trying to be all things to all people, we decided again, simple is best. And I think if you speak to anyone who's a sales leader or a business owner, we kind of keep a pulse to this continuously. 50% of sales leaders always say, my CRM is really hard to use. I don't like it. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a beast. And we're trying to address that. We're disrupting that to say, it doesn't need to be, it doesn't have to be that complicated. So in our world, I think the snippets that you're looking for, there'll be more custom objects and so on in Sales Hub. We're doing a bunch around campaign marketing and target account work. So clients in the space want to have more specific knowledge of their target accounts and be able to manage those better. And we're doing a bunch of AI work. So I think in this space, the idea of taking some of the legwork out of this for salespeople, we want to have a bunch of intuitive work where for sequences, we want to take a bunch of the manual laboring out of sequencing for sales folks. We've got some new predictive scoring, some new sender scoring, some interesting things in there to help salespeople figure out what I'm doing right and wrong, to my point earlier on. if people had this facility in our global install base today, they would see my salespeople are actually making a hash of what they're doing, and they could step in and either coach them or stop them or both. So that piece we're leaning in on there. Mobile is really big on sales as well, with a view to the future, where in a post-COVID world, people will need to have a much more enhanced mobile interface. So we've got what we call a today view. So the idea of being able to see in one place, as a sales rep for today, everything you need that either you created for yourself and was sent to you, and you just got your simplified view of everything that has to be completed today. You don't go looking around rummaging, trying to see what did you forget and where is it sitting and what else needs to be reminded. It's just presented in a very simple way, and then presenting a bunch of other stuff through mobile on snippets and docs and quotes and various things you can now interact with through mobile. And the one that probably on the sales for me, and this is close to my heart, we're introducing pipeline snapshotting. And for anyone who maybe isn't familiar with the term, one of the most challenging things for any sales leader is that when you see this week's set of data, you can't quite tell what the change is week over week or over the course of the prior periods. So snapshotting was going to keep track of all of those changes. So as you come in and look at it, you can instantly see that number's gone up, that number's gone down, that number's moved. And you can see all the components that have shifted and moved and changed, which is incredibly interesting for a manager, leader, business owner to be able to then step in and say, why has it? And have the conversation with your salespeople or whoever it might be. And that one, while it sounds like an obvious thing to do, I got to tell you, there's almost all enterprise level CRMs struggle with this. Many don't have it at all. And the ones that do find it really bloody difficult to try and understand that snapshotting experience. So that's really interesting, which then gives me one other piece, which is this pipeline waterfall concept that as your sales period, if it's your multi-year quarter, evolves, the idea of being able to see what's changing as your business ebbs and flows. So how much stuff did you bring into this period with you via pipeline? How much new have you added? How much have you closed as lost? How much have you pushed out to next period? You can see all that cascade of the plus and minuses, which gets you from start to here and gives you a really interesting view of your business to see where you're good and where you're not across the sales sub piece. So there's loads, and there's a whole bunch of other things I haven't mentioned, but like those kind of things for me are just, they're incredibly interesting things.
Well, as somebody who runs their business using those same sales dashboard tools, yeah. all of that sounded really very, very useful, and we'll get our guys running around on a Tuesday morning looking at snapshots. A couple of questions. We are the trouble is that clock's just rushing by. We have 6 minutes left on the clock. And I got a couple of questions here that have just come in from outside. So I got a yes, no for you. Somebody's just popped in. Any plans for setting permission levels at a property level? You can just say yes, no, I hope so. That's fine.
Yes, there is.
This one I like, and it's really, I guess, looking back at where we were and what's happened. During COVID, both internal and external offerings to client have changed. If you had to redo things, is there anything you'd do differently, knowing what you know now down the line?
About how we managed the...
Yeah. Anything you think that you could have done better in hindsight?
Yeah, I guess the one thing that came up was helping people set up their home environment was, and it sounds like maybe a practical one, but I think we, like everybody else, we just didn't know at the very outset if this was going to be a 1 month to 3 month or a 1 year time window, right? So people had previously been very used to just bringing their laptop. If you want to work from somewhere for a week, you sure take your laptop and that's fine. And I think people just assumed that would be fine too. And then I think they realized a little bit in that they probably needed a bit more help and support. And we then were a little bit tied hands that the ability to distribute things to people's houses was limited because we couldn't go into our own office. Distribution, couriers and so on were all tied up. So that was, I'd have loved to have seen that coming and maybe addressed it in advance, but yeah, it was hard to kind of see that one in advance, but that was the one thing we felt a little bit of a speed bump, if you like. Yep.
Thank you. So with regard to now we come out, I think many organizations have basically battened down the hatches expecting a major storm, and they've now feeling, and certainly from our perspective, the feeling is that we might just be getting to the edge of the hurricane, as it were. Do you have any tips or suggestions on priorities in coming out of the issues that we've been facing? What areas of the business would you invest in?
Yeah, so from a customer, from the folks listening's perspective, I think what we've done on our side is we've again dug into the data, right, which is always the starting point of most of where we'll go. But we took a look at of where we've been selling and marketing. What are those funnel efficiencies that have the best funnel efficiency? They've changed a whole bunch. To your point a minute ago, Bob, we used to have a very interesting growth trajectory for travel and transport, and that has obviously fundamentally changed. Healthcare and life sciences has just become a boom area, and again, these are relatively obvious in our world when I say them out loud, but depending on the industry and business you're in, pulling those funnel metrics, and the piece we look at, of course, is as much as on the marketing side, we can see the campaign efficiency and the lead to deal or lead to click-through rates, conversion rates, and so on in the top of funnel. In the sales funnel, the most important pieces we had was where we're finding QLs or leads coming through, and lead to discovery to demo to close, the speed of those, the conversion rates of those, the deal size of those. And we worked out our version of it, which is a weighted matrix that says the effort put into each of these funnels, which are the most interesting funnels for us to put effort into, because I suspect listeners are thinking this the same way as I was, is we find out resource and we need to know very, very quickly, where should I pour more fuel? So what's working the best, and where do we put more fuel, and which is the least effective? And even if it was effective previously, I need to just accept that that's no longer something I should work on and cut my losses and stop putting money there for now. That may come back later on. But just knowing that, I think was the catalyst for us. We've pivoted now into areas where we weren't focusing previously. That's going to vary but for everybody on the call, depending on the business that you're in. But doing that diligence, and then I guess having that honest moment of, for the next 6, 9, or 12 months, again, depending on the flexibility of your business, we will only focus ourselves on A, and we will stop all efforts on B. We'll review it periodically, but just letting the data lead it, because otherwise, where I fear is sometimes people are a little bit emotionally connected to the previous business setup they had, and they try to persist and try and maintain what they had through this new world. I just advocate step back and be honest and have a look at what the new world shape is, and adapt yourselves accordingly, and do it quickly, of course, because there's no time to lose.
Christian, that was really great, and I thoroughly enjoyed our conversations, and I hope that I'm pretty certain everyone out there did, because we have a very large number of people who've stuck with us through the whole of that 45-minute session. Thank you to all of those that have. That's a cue for me to just offer a little reward to those that have stuck with us. We have a little competition running, very, very simple. Just take a key takeaway from the session we've just run and post it up on LinkedIn with the hashtag Grow20. Don't forget that hashtag. It's very key to be part of the competition. On screen, you'll see a couple of our previous lucky winners with their Apple EarPods. They're kind of cool and good to have. So please, all you need to do is to post something up for us onto LinkedIn with the hashtag Grow20. The next session upcoming is from Monzo on winning on customer experience, and Jack Cully from Monzo will be there, and alongside of him, our own Client Services Director, Jess Gamble, supporting. I know for sure that I've had a fantastic day. Christian, thank you very much for being with us. And I very much hope that all the rest of you have a terrific day. Please don't miss out on the sessions that are running this afternoon. We're running right the way through until 5 o'clock today with a series of further sessions, both around product. And please, if you have a chance, don't miss the session this afternoon with that man Halligan, who is joining us at around 3 o'clock. Christian, thanks again. Really, really great session. Enjoyed it very much. And thank you all for staying with us. Stay safe.
Thanks so much. Thank you.